Okay, this illustration of the dog and a dog owner kind of hiding the dog represents pretty well what's going on in Macau, and I'm going to explain everything about why this is like this way and what's going on with the COVID and the zero COVID policy, and I'm also going to show you some footage of walking around Macau as well. So let's start with some footage. And right here is a testing center. So right now with the zero COVID policy, we are under partial lockdown, which means we cannot walk around or go anywhere. We can't walk a dog. We can't have a cigarette outside. Not that I smoke, but you can't do those things. You can only go to the testing center, and also you can go to the grocery stores. So I'm going to show a lot of footage today, but I just want to. So this partial lockdown has already been going for a week, and they extended it to July 22. So we'll see what happens. I'm going to show some footage of me going to the testing center and back, and kind of talk about that, and I'll also show all these newspaper articles about what's happening in Macau and why we're at this spot right now. Chiquinha, chiquinha, toma cuidado da bovidinha, chiquinha. Okay, I also have something I want you to put in the comments below. So I just want you to think about what do you think about dog owner rights during a pandemic? So we're going to talk about that on today's episode. And so write some comments below, type it down below. And again, I'm going to state the question one more time. What do you think about dog owner rights during a pandemic? So you might be kind of controversial. So we'll see what you all say. And I'm going to show you a little bit of footage. I'm going to talk about exactly what's going on. This footage is me going to the Nat Center. And you can see certain things happening here. Like you can see delivery drivers. So delivery drivers are okay. But most things are shut right now, but essential workers are available. So you'll be able to see that grocery stores are open, pharmacies are open, and takeout deliveries are open. So there'll be a lot of takeout drivers. And when you see, there's another takeout driver right there. And when you see people going somewhere, they'll usually have grocery store bags or going to the grocery store. So you can see people going in and out of there, which has a strange byproduct that's happening is that people know they can go there. So they'll walk around with bags and go get groceries, and sometimes they might even interact or socialize in that setting, and then that's their only way to get out of the house. So the streets will be basically quite empty outside of that. Okay, so as I'm not allowed to walk around and film anymore, except to go to my Nat Test Center and back. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show a bunch of newspaper article clips, and just so you can kind of be aware of what's going on, and this will kind of talk about exactly why this is like this right now. And let's do that right now. So restrictions, because China and by default Macau is focusing on the zero COVID policy, they've basically created all these rules. So right here, there's all these infractions. These are people who have basically, if you're an essential worker, you're allowed to go to work and deliver food and work in taxis, ride buses, all kinds of stuff. But then the other half of the people are not allowed to do anything. And so you're not even allowed to leave your house. And then there's places like the beach that are closed. So you're not allowed to go to the beach or to go outside or to walk a dog. And we're going to focus on walking a dog in this particular one, but I also want to give you all the other stuff going on around this. Here's violations. So it's a stay-at-home called partial lockdown regulation. So the partial lockdown, I guess, means that essential workers can ride the buses and they get a pass and they can go anywhere they want for work reasons. And then everybody else is not supposed to leave their house. And if you have to show that you're going to the Nat Test Center or that you're going to the grocery store. People are going to prison. So this man has a 5-month prison. I think that this story, there's a handful of them, but I think this particular one was a guy who went to his grandfather's house and then smoked a cigarette outside. And I think he put his mask down for a second, and then and there's a lot of policemen that are walking around and they're ready to write up these infractions. And there's also the cases can be expedited to deliver sentences quite quickly as well. So there's lots of warnings. There's a lot of different articles constantly updating. I think the other one had 900. This has 800. But I think per day there's like new things like this all the time about all these restrictions. So, for example, jogging. So there's people that are walking around at nighttime, jogging, and that's not acceptable. So you can go to jail, and at the minimum have some fines. So these things are not allowed at this particular moment. And I'm going to focus on the dogs too, but it's even cars are kind of confusing. I heard there's like some roadblocks, and then are asking you if you're actually going to a testing center or a grocery store, and if you're not, then you can also have problems too. But if you are in a car, you have to have the mask on at all times apparently. But then they made a new rule that if you have your window down, the mask has to be up. So they're making tons of kind of these restrictions like this. Fast tracked, so the prosecution can be fast tracked. So that means if you're guilty of going outside and walking a dog or these other things, you can lose your blue card if you're on a work visa. You can go to jail. There's a lot of they've expedited everything at the moment. Now, I also just want to state here too, my goal is not to criticize what's happening. I'm just kind of making awareness of what's in the newspapers, and just there's people that are wondering what's happening. So these are basically what's happening. So these are just sources that are picking up from different newspapers in Macau. So I'll tie all these into the dogs in particular, but just there's massive testing centers that are being converted that are just purely for testing every day. I agree with that. I actually have no problem at all with any of that, with reducing COVID and making the public safe. So all of these things are great. So this is just kind of a video that just kind of letting people know what's going on, because a lot of people are talking about the dogs, and so I'm gonna come around to that as well. But before we get into that, I'm just going to come back to this is me filming going to the NAT test center, and I'm also getting groceries as well. By the way, so these are the grocery store area, and I'm just going to go into the San Mui briefly. And the reason I'm going in here is to show you is that you can see there's kind of like a hybrid of things happening. So there's on one hand there's people who can go to jail for crimes, but then there's on the other hand there's people that are essential workers who are kind of free to walk around and do whatever they want, and grocery stores are open, and I think that's great. We should be open, but it's kind of it's a difficult time because well, as you can guess. So I'm going to go in and get some groceries here. So okay, so pharmacy is open, bakery is open, so that's the other thing that's kind of confusing, like Fortress is closed, so it's kind of like half and half. Okay, let's just get to the dogs. This is another supermarket as well. I just want to come in here real quick so you can see bakery's open, which is great. We need things. It's actually good that they're keeping things partially, because that way we don't have to panic and we don't have to be severely restricted. So I'm actually quite appreciative about that. But I do wish there was a little bit of flexibility with some other things. So the park and shop is open as well. So I'm going to go into this one a little bit and then continue on. And we're going to get right into the dog walking and out loud. And I'm a little bit cautious about this because I don't want to challenge things too much, because it's not going to be productive. People will become stakeholders and double down on their restrictions, when actually we need a little bit more freedom and a little bit of understanding. So there's a lot of stories that are popping up right now about the dog walking ban. And I think my bigger goal is just to kind of, I like this channel just because I want to record stuff in history of exactly what's happening, so that there's a record of stuff just for posterity. So everything I'm using is just directly from the newspapers and also direct experience from being here. Luckily I'm not a dog owner, so I don't actually have these issues, but there's a lot of discussion about the dog owner ban in particular. And here's one particular story. So there's actually some buildings that are in the red zones, which means that nobody can go in or out, and they basically lock up the building. I'll try to film some of those later when we're not restricted. I can't even go anywhere to film anything like that. But this story is about a dog that was in one of these red zones, and I think that this particular story there's actually some push and take, give and take. So I heard because of this, they're now allowing veterinarians to go into the red zones and to actually help out. But there's a lot of extra stuff that's out there too. Heads up for dog owners who are sneaking out for a quick walk. There's undercover government officials, and they're giving out warnings, and they're taking your photo. So that's kind of, there's stuff like that popping up. So we'll see. Hopefully it resolves itself. I don't think that the authorities want to be focused on that. I think they'd rather be focused on COVID. So I hope that this policy is going to be moving on and going out. NGOs are trying to have people respect animal rights. There's also been I do appreciate some things happening in Macau, and one of them is that the government has been talking to different organizations about what they can do differently. So at this point, things are still the same, They've even been extended another 5 days, but we're hoping that things will be re-examined. This is that one photo again of that's kind of comes around to the front again of what's happening here, and people are scared to be in public with their pets. I've also heard some pretty strange stories too about people using the stairwell centers for dogs to defecate, and there's a lot of stories about like trying to help people train their dogs to not defecate or not develop the habits of defecating in the house, and there's a lot of different stuff like that. And there's some memes. This is mostly floating around in the Chinese speaking world, so it's in Chinese. But what are you in for? Jogging, walking the dog, wore the wrong mask. So there's all of these are things that are happening in the city. So I'm just kind of giving you a little bit more background, and then I'm gonna show a little bit more video footage of exactly what's happening, so you understand the different effects that's going on as well. Anyways, I am supporting the government to reduce the cases. I do think it's a good idea. I just hope that maybe some of these things can be challenged, or not challenged, but readjusted, thought about more. I do like Macau. I love Macau, and I love having it home, and I love the people here. So this right here is the confirmed cases. So every day it's going down a little bit. So this is actually great news. There's another question all about the zero COVID policy in general, but this is good news for the goal of trying to reduce it. This is also mentioned too. Just good job for the government for trying to reduce it. So I'm gonna also say that as well. These are some of the things that's kind of happening though. So some of these stuff could be challenged. 5-month sentence for the smoker. I think I shared that story earlier, but these are some of the effects. The UN Human Rights is questioning the proportionality of partial lockdown. So the lockdown itself is great, not great, but it's understandable since they're trying to get the zero COVID policy. But the proportionality of the crimes is another issue. And yeah, there's also people that are locked up in the red zones, which is I think that's not really questioned too much, but I think that the hygiene and just what goes on behind those doors could be quite interesting to examine. Red zones, they're actually reducing those, so I think the government is actively trying to suppress the virus and bring down the cases. So so if you're doing the zero COVID, it's the correct strategy. Every day there's NAT tests, almost every day. So they record how many people actually have COVID. Most of them are asymptomatic, by the way, and there's a lot of quarantine contact tracing of other people that are completely healthy that are going into quarantines as well. So that's another one of the effects. The mental disorders. This article talks about just this extraordinary amount of people that are crying out for help and using these hotlines. And there was also somebody in a red zone area that was trying to commit suicide, and I think that was prevented, but it made the news as well. Human Rights Committee are questioning the proportionality of it, so maybe these measures are too strong. So that could be in question. And then this is actually pretty interesting. So I just want to highlight this whole article. And so I'm just going to kind of zero in on this a little bit. But basically they're talking about the confinement, the fact that half the people are essential workers, can do whatever they want. And then the other half of us, like myself, we can't leave our place. And especially, in somewhere like Macau, there's extended families in one household. There's a lot of people in one household. It's difficult to just only stay in your house for very extended periods of time. Plus, people have jobs. So this is talking about the confinement and what are some of the repercussions of it. One such thing is unpaid leave. So there's all the ones that are not essential workers, that they are not having any income, and they also have to pay rent. So that's going to affect their landlords. So there's going to be this big backlog of cases. And actually the basic reaction by the government is that people should try to help each other out, which is kind of interesting because we're not allowed to see other people or go to people's residences or to interact with them. So it's a kind of a challenge, but somehow we're also supposed to understand if we don't get paid rent and the landlords don't aren't able to pay their mortgage. So somehow there's supposed to be this understanding between all the parties involved that we're all in together. I don't know how that's going to work, but that's basically what they're talking about in this article. Is that's the response from the government to be a little bit more compassionate towards their citizens and who lives here. And actually these footage are kind of interesting as well because you can see just the emptiness of. But anyways, you can see some of the articles for yourself. I think this article is particularly interesting, just talking about, how that balance. And so it'll be interesting to see how the government restores that balance and just kind of, relieves some of this press and stress on its citizens. And so with this, I'm going to go back and just kind of show footage of the city again, just from the NAT test center, so you can get an idea of what it's like to be walking around during this time period. For some reason, my camera is not so good right at this moment, but I was walking towards the test center, and so some of the pictures, some of the videos is a little bit not in the right sequence. So I went by the grocery stores and I went to this one Carmel where the opening credit is at, and you can see essential workers are out. There's some cars around, and I'm actually a little bit shy, embarrassed to use the camera because I don't know exactly what the people who are outside, what they're doing exactly. I'm assuming they're going to the grocery stores, but I don't know. But for the most part, you can see that these things are shut down, and so the whole city is shut down. So just the amount of economic stress this is on all these people who have businesses and livelihoods around a small business, which is the most of the city. And then just, I don't know, there's some economic relief, so I hope it helps. But I know it might not be enough. Especially there's a lot of people that are kind of forgotten. So not everybody is a Macau resident. So there's lots of people from, Philippines, Indonesia that are paid very low, and then they also have to pay rent, and they also have to feed families in their respective countries, and they also love Macau, especially since none of them been able to go in or out of Macau. So a lot of them are doing this enormous sacrifice of just staying in Macau and trying to earn money and trying to stick it through, even though the times are tough. So I hope that there's some consideration for those people as well in Macau. I hope there's but I just want to say, for people that are viewing this, I do feel as a member of this community, and I do want COVID to be reduced. And I'm not sure what I think about the zero COVID policy. I think I'd rather have a different policy that helps more the economy. But it is what it is. So, but if we are going to be dealing with this, I hope that there will be some compassion for the people that live in the city, and just trying to balance out the economic needs, the psychological needs, the mental needs, things like this. So that's basically what's happening here. It's a little bit of a struggle at the moment. And yeah, that's just the beauty of walking around Macau. I miss walking around. I was glad that I could at least walk to do a NAT test and get some groceries. My footages will be quite short for a while, probably just limited to when I can actually go take a test, and maybe I'll try to go to a different locations around me a little bit so that there's a little variation. But for the most part, you can see empty streets and kind of a slow resolve to I don't know the future. But I'm going to try to create different videos, different aspects. I don't think I'll be able to just do the streets that I used to be able to do. I did kind of walk here. This used to be a parking lot, so they're actually doing stuff that's just kind of stopped, and I was kind of curious how that's going to go. That's a parking lot that's being converted to something else. And to the left is another big project they're going to be doing a firecracker factory that's going to be changed significantly to something else. There's so many cool things happening in Macau. It's too bad that everything's going to be on hold for a while, but we're just going to hope for the best. And I'll try to do maybe more target-focused things in my videos, and then later when we actually have our freedoms to walk around again, I'll be able to film some different streets and maybe some other stuff that's going around with the COVID in particular. Anyways, hope you enjoyed this one, and I'm going to be ending it here, and that's the end of the film for today. So hopefully you understand a little bit of what's going on, or at least be aware of what's happening.
Chiquinha,